My name is Adrian Chavez. I'm an oil painter based here in Southern Oregon. I've been painting ever since I was about 3 years old, kind of the basic answer everyone else has. But I really started to get my grip on it probably in high school when I started to get more involved in projects involving artwork. And I really started to get an education in it about 2 years ago when I started working with a local artist, Ryan Moon. And we've been working together since. Going into high school, it was just charcoal and drawing with pencil, and I always told myself I could never paint. Like, that's way too hard. I didn't understand how to achieve form, how to really work the brush, and it just seemed easier to get that direct line when I was painting. And I think in high school, my art teacher, Ms. Louis, made me use watercolors one time. And it felt a little comfortable. I thought, it's not too bad. And then she said, okay, now try acrylics. And that's where my head was just like I had no idea what I was doing. But after a while, I started to get used to the viscosity of the paint and sort of how to mix it around. And I started to see, what you can really achieve with it. And I think meeting Ryan is when I started to use oil paints. And he told me, they're the best, man. Don't use anything else. And at first they were really hard to work with, but I think over time, learning what you can do with them and what you can't is really a big strength for him. So oil paint's now my new favorite. I do portraiture, mostly in oils. And it's funny to say that because before I used to hate painting people. And that's one of the things that Ryan forced me to do the most. He said, you're gonna learn and you're gonna know how to paint people by the end of the year. Mostly the subjects that I've been painting recently have been people that are close to me, whether it be friends or family. And sometimes it's fun to just capture them in like a random moment that they're in. And it might not even be like a deep thing. I mean, I'm painting a portrait of my nephew right now eating a sandwich. I also, along with looking at, sort of the facial expression that they have, I really look at a lot of technical stuff when I'm painting. It's really a lot of visual. And I'll see how do the eyes look, how does the skin tones, the shadows, how is it on this photo. And I usually try to work from my own photographs that I take. It's just kind of seeing how could I transfer this to a painting and kind of give it, sort of a twist to look in my style. Yeah, every time I paint, it's almost like it changes into something else, and it might start as one thing but end as another. And every painting I've done so far is more of a question that I have for myself that I'm trying to answer. It's mostly answering questions involving technical aspects of painting, whether it be, well, how would it look if I use this color combination? If I use an orange instead of a red, or if I used a lot more cool colors in my shadows instead of warmer colors. And it's kind of just trying to experiment and see what would work and what wouldn't work. And it's a lot of trial and error, but you do get those gems every now and then where you say this, you sit back and say this worked. I'll do this again in another painting. Every painting is sort of its own challenge, but I think there has been one moment specifically where I got shot down, where it was kind of a reality check for me. And it was an instructor I had a while back who, I would give paintings to and they would check them out. And I did this painting one time and I was like, this is my best one yet. By far my best painting ever. And I remember I was painting it and I was like, this is it, I'm going for it. And I was really excited to show them the next day. And I presented them this painting and they're just kind of looking at it and they always do sort of a critique on it. And I remember just looking at it and going, so what do you have to say? And then they're like, cool, yeah, do you want my honest opinion? And I was like, mm-hmm. And then they were like, this is probably the worst painting you've ever done. And I remember sitting there and I was like, wait, what? I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. And they kind of, at first it stumped me and I was like, no way. But as they went into detail about it and the technique that I used for it and how I used the colors, I kind of started to understand. I was like, oh yeah, oh, why did I do that? And again, at first I was like, why would you say that? But then as they explained it, I understood, okay, I would do this differently next time. Which I think is a good way to learn, because sometimes you don't get a teacher who's very direct and says, oh, this isn't quite good, you should try this next time. Usually they tend to be a little more lenient about it, but the way I learn the most is with a teacher who's like, this needs to change, you need to do this better. And that was really eye-opening for me, because it was, that reality check where you're like, Adrian, you don't know everything, dude. You got to do some more. So I just moved into my studio, probably back in January, and it's been a ton of work, but I've been so thankful, because before, as a lot of my friends know, I've been painting out of my room, and the ceilings are so low that anytime you would open up any paint fume, anytime you would try to let a painting sit there to dry, it would just reek the whole room up. So I would always have to sleep in my living room. And I would always fight back and forth with my mom because I didn't want a bed in my room either. So I had more space for a desk and an easel. And Ended up getting a bed in there. I totally lost that fight. You know, there's no winning against mom. And yeah, the opportunity opened up here downtown to have a studio. And you know, I've put a lot of work into it, kind of painting it and making it my own thing. And I'm so thankful to have a space to be able to create work. It's funny because before I started big painting, I always tell myself like, oh, I have to do a bunch of little study paintings. So if I'm here by myself and I don't have anything that I'm working on, you know, I'll either do like a 1 hour study painting. I love sketching in my sketchbook. I'm trying to fill one up. So close to filling up my first sketchbook. Or I'll just kind of look online and just look up random tutorials for things I might do in the future. So, you know, it's always just kind of learning and seeing what I can do next. And I'm trying to get a little bigger and bigger on my paintings. Hopefully for our next show, most of my paintings will be like 3 by 4 feet and above. And I actually just bought my whole painting palette in oils, in like big tubes too, so I have those ready for whenever I get a big canvas. I would say my biggest inspirations are for sure, you know, Ryan Moon being my instructor. Visually looking at art from Spain, a lot of the artists that live there I really like. There's Nicolas Uribe, Sebas Velasco, a lot of different artists that I follow on Instagram and create incredible work, and they all do murals as well, so kind of my end goal really is to, you know, do murals around the world with portraiture. Growing up, there has been a lot of negativity kind of surrounding people of color in the art world, at least for me, you know, from what I've experienced. But thankfully lately I have been seeing a huge movement of it, you know, with supporting, you know, artists of color and all these hashtags on Twitter, and especially on Instagram is where I see it the most. And it's really good for me to see people striving, you know, that came from that background of color, because it's, you know, it's inspiration really. I mean, if you come from the same background or a similar background and you see someone else be able to kind of strive from it. And I can't speak for all culture, but you know, at least in my family, being just Mexican, being an artist was never really a job option. It was always kind of a hobby or thing you would just be good at. And I remember growing up, I would always, you know, tell my family like, oh, I want to be an artist. And nothing against them, but they would always say, you know, like, oh, you can't do that. And, you know, which is okay to think, you know, it's not the easiest way to get a job anywhere. And, you know, they would say, oh, you have to get a good job doing like any physical labor. Like, you know, you get paid high, it's hard work, but, you know, you get home at the end of the day and you have food on the table. And it's been hard convincing them over time, you know, like you can make money through art. And I remember getting my first kind of paycheck through artwork with one of the first paintings I sold. And I just got home and I was like, look at this. And it was funny because it wasn't even that much money, but it was like, for me as a kid growing up, I was like, I sold a painting. Like, I can make money from this. And I'm always, you know, when someone tells me not to do something, I always kind of challenge that. And I think growing up and having, you know, a couple of people sort of say like, oh, you know, you can't really make a good job out of painting, was honestly part of my biggest inspiration to keep going. Just so I can, you know, go, yes, you can do, you know, you can make a career out of this if you just work towards it and you kind of know where to put your education for it. So it has been difficult for sure, but I think working more, now even having my own studio, I think the family really sees it as a huge opportunity for me to keep working. And it's funny because now my mom is always like, has family in town and she's like, you got to see my son's studio, like he does awesome work. And it's a good feeling for me too, you know, coming from that family and knowing that, you know, maybe at first they were a little rocky about it, but now they do fully support it. But I know it's not easy for, you know, anyone really. One of my favorite memories was actually really recent. I used to teach with at-risk youth, and you know, that was probably a couple years back, and I had one of the students out of nowhere find me on Instagram. And they just sent me a message and they said, Adrian, check this out. And it was just like a drawing that they did. And for me, that was huge. I was, you know, because what I want to do is create an impact in other people's lives. And my end goal is, you know, I really want to be an art teacher and be able to teach people growing up, you know, like how to kind of perfect their craft. And to have this student, you know, go this long, you know, still drawing, still painting, you know, doing their thing, and to be like, oh, like I want to show this to Adrian, you know, he showed me a lot of stuff back then. That was huge for me. And I mean, I don't know, to them, it was just kind of a message where they're like, oh, I want Adrian to check this out. But for me, you know, having that student check in after all this time and still think about me and what I taught them was huge for me. And, you know, it was just really nice for me to have that message and know that I did make an impact in someone's life. And I hope to continue doing that. Yeah, I would tell anyone that wants to pursue art really to just, you know, keep working towards it. And sometimes it seems like people are just born being good at painting, but it really is practice. And, you know, it's not until you practice for a while that you really look back and say, you know, wow, I really learned this much. And even if there are people that doubt you, whether it be family or friends, really strive and just keep going forward, because there is going to be a point where they'll say, okay, like maybe we were a little too harsh. But I really do think that if you do work hard, you really can be what you want to be.